welcome. Happy day, happy life, happy journey. So grateful to have this opportunity to say hello to you all with our wonderful guest, Gregg Braden. Gregg, I was going to read your bio, but I think if somebody doesn't know who you are, they must be living under a rock because you're just everywhere, man.
Well, how do you know I'm a wonderful guest if we haven't started yet? That's now I have to live up to that very high bar you've just set. So thank you. So let me just begin, Brother John. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I want to say hello to our Arrhythmia family and all the staff that is working diligently, taking such good care of everybody that passes through those Arrhythmia doors. It is a beautiful place. I'm going to tell you, every time I've been there, I have felt cared for and nurtured from the time I walk in, even after I leave, because on the van on the way to the airport, Jerry is still there. Gerard is still there on video talking to me all the way to the airport. So I feel cared for all the way to the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure to have you here. I have to say, the last time you were here, we had the great pleasure of going out to dinner. And I'll tell you what I was struck with. You said those beautiful words about Arrhythmia. Let me just say a few beautiful words about you. What I was so struck with was I've met a lot of thought leaders, and you were one of the most genuinely interested and curious in everyone at the table. Like you wanted to know about each of us in an authentic and caring way. And I just thought that was such a great testament of who you are, that there must be a philosophy underneath that in the way that you interact with people. Would you share a little bit about that? Does that make sense?
Sure. Everything matters. That's the philosophy. Everything matters. All lives matter. All lives at that dinner table mattered. And when we come together for a week program, which is what I was invited to participate in Arrhythmia, for me, it's a promise. And it's a two-way promise. People from all over the world promise to be there. They promise to be there with an open mind and open heart because they want to know themselves in the presence of a different state of being. My promise is to be fully present, fully focused, fully aware, not distracted, to be at the best health possible. So it's important for me to take good care of myself so that I can keep my promise. And while we're together, we've got these few brief moments in the cosmic scheme of time that we have together, just this little window of time, this precious moments that we get to share together, and then it's finished, and I may never see those people again. And I think one of the most honoring things that we can do for one another, John, is to honestly listen to one another and listen with our hearts as well as our minds. You know, the new science is now revealed that we've got a neural network, about 40,000 neurons in the human heart that think, feel, remember, and function independently of the brain. And what the science also shows is typically in a conversation, when we're with another person, rather than listening to that person, we are formulating in our ego and in our psyche our response to what it is they're saying without really honoring and absorbing the intent of what is being shared with us. So all of that comes to play, hopefully transparently at the dinner table. I just wanted to check everybody out and see why they're doing what they're doing and where they come from and where it all fits together. So thank you for recognizing that. That means a lot. Appreciate it.
It meant so much to each of us, and it was a testament to the integrity with which you walk, the consistency of your teaching, and that you walk that walk with such elegance. Thank you. And I found myself listening deeply as you were speaking and not thinking about my next question. I wrote it down.
See how well it works? See how connected we are?
I've been connecting with you, and this is part of what I love so excited to talk to you about is this idea. You know, you represent so clearly the nexus of science and spirituality. Joe Dispenza says that, you know, science is the new language of mysticism. I think that's a beautiful statement. Sure. Before we get into all of that, you know, I had to ask you a question right up front. You've been interviewed a million times I bet literally a million times, and so many questions. I think, as the arc of your spiritual growth and development has continued, I'm thinking of like a jazz musician like Miles Davis, right? He did Kind of Blue, and later he was in Bitches Brew, but everybody still wanted to hear Kind of Blue. Do you have that sort of sense in interviews? Are there some questions that you're tired of asking or don't look as forward to? And what are the questions you really want to talk about? What's bubbling up for you?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The way it often comes up is people, this will happen at live events. I'll be on stage, with a few thousand people in the room, and they'll say, "Aren't you tired of doing this?" And first time I heard, I was surprised. And I said, "Well, why would I be tired of doing this?" And they said, "Well, because you've done it so many times." And I said, it was a man that was asking, and I said, "My brother, this is the first time that I've been here with you." And although, the slides for the presentation may be similar, but the vibe in the room, the hearts in the room, the minds in the room, the people in the room, the world events that are transpiring while we're there have never happened before. So every event is a brand new event. I never tire of sharing the content, and every interview is a brand new interview. So there are things that are more current for me, certainly. But this is the 37th year that I've offered this work in one form or another. And there's a continuity to the work. I'll tell you, one of the ways this question came up, I was doing a radio interview, actually ended up being what we call a hostile radio interview, where, it was a morning talk show, East Coast of the United States. I won't name the city, big city in the New England Northeast area. Commuter traffic, morning talk show. And the first thing the interviewer said, he wasn't kind like you were. He didn't welcome me to the program, didn't say anything about my history, my background. The first thing he said to me, he says, "Greg, why can't you stick with one topic like everybody else?" And I said, I thought it was a joke. I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Man, he says, you're all over the map." He said, "What the hell are you talking about? Are you talking about the magnetic fields of the earth or the human heart, ancient wisdom or modern science?" He said, "Man, you just can't seem to get it together and stay with one topic." And I kind of laughed, and I said, "My work covers a lot of ground." I said, "If you look closely at every one of the books that I've written and every one of the topics that I've addressed, each one represents one facet of our human experience. And in a very real sense, I have stayed with one topic. It's a big topic. It's us and our relationship to the past, our relationship to our body, our relationship to the future, to the cosmos, our relationship to one another, the extraordinary potential, the untapped potential that lives within every one of us that modern science is only beginning to understand. Many ancient traditions were able to tap, but they didn't fully understand why or how. And this is the first time in recorded human history where these things are coming together. The science tells us what works and what doesn't, and why things work so that we can do more of the good and the healthy things. It also tells us what doesn't work so we can stop putting our energy into the things. And I'll tell you where this is really important, and especially in the New Thought community, John, when it comes to healing. I have at least, and I'm counting now, at least 5 friends that are no longer in this world because they were of the thinking that they would address their health issues based upon the knowledge that was coming to them through YouTube and through a lot of New Thought practitioners, well-intentioned people. So they said, we're going to address these issues holistically, which is a beautiful, powerful thing to do, to say the words. They never followed up with the actions that give meaning to those words because it was not understood clearly their relationship to their bodies. So they followed practices that were essentially meaningless. Maybe the placebo effect helped them a little bit, but the practices they followed didn't really support their healing and their health. And this, I think, is where the science is really, really important, because the science tells us the nuts and bolts of how things work. It doesn't always know what to do with the nuts and the bolts.
Mm.
And this is where the spiritual principles come in. So science is only about 300 years old. For 300 years, we've been understanding our relationship to our bodies in the world. And now the scientists are saying, okay, there's a field that connects all things. What do we do with it? For example, or we can self-regulate our biology, upregulate and downregulate our own genes. What do we do with that? 5,000 years of human experience has told us what to do with it and how to apply it, but they didn't have to prove it, and they don't fully understand. My indigenous friends don't fully understand the mechanism. They just say, if you breathe this way and you focus this way, this is what's going to happen. So we are the generation where these two come together in a very beautiful way and give us an evolutionary edge to transcend and thrive, not just survive, but thrive the uncharted waters that have come to our doorstep in a way that we've never seen. We've never seen in 5,000 years of human history, the rate and the speed of change that we're being asked to embrace right now. And we're wired to do so in a healthy way if we can embrace the deep truth of the soft technology that is us. Not chips, not computer chips and wires and chemicals, but we're talking about neurons and cell membranes and crystalline structure of bone. And our ability to self-regulate how these things function in our lives. And that makes us extraordinarily powerful beings. Long answer to a short question.
Great answer. It popped me ahead to some of the other questions that I wanted to ask you, but this really gets into, in the wisdom codes, you were talking about, words changing the structure of the thalamus. So speaking about your friends who embraced the new thought, but perhaps there was a contradiction between the affirmation of their lips and the feeling and sentiment behind it, and then the action that backs that up. Many new thought leaders from the 1800s, Phineas Quimby, Emmett Curtis Hopkins, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, used this technology to heal physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this speaks to the science of prayer. I'd love to know, you had 5 friends that are no longer in this world. Do you have any other examples of your personal experience or of friends that have healed through the power of prayer, through the power of connecting to this unified field, this creative medium in which we live and move and have our beingness in response to our thinking?
Sure. I think we do it all the time. We do it every day. I think we're all examples of that. What we're beginning to understand. So first, I'm just going to say, as a scientist, I am a degreed earth scientist, strong background in life sciences, molecular biology, molecular chemistry, vertebrate and invertebrate paleontology, math, physics, and computer science. And I say that because it is that diverse background that helps me to stay current with the new discoveries. I can flip through the reports. I've learned to read them pretty quickly, these technical reports and obscure journals. The science is very clear about who we are. One of the most profound discoveries, we've all metaphysically and spiritually, we've said, we are one, we are connected. And it was only in the last few years that modern science has confirmed there is, in fact, a field that underlies all of creation. But here's what happens when I go to a scientific conference. Often those very scientists who say that field's there, here's what they do with their hands. There's a field out there that connects all things, separating us from the field. Yes. And here is the fundamental essence of why that's so important. In this very instant, right now, every nanosecond of our lives, the atoms that form the molecules and the proteins of our body, they are constantly emerging and collapsing into that field. It's not that the field is out there. We are the field. We are wrinkles. In the field. We're disturbances in this field, to quote Star Wars. We are literally disturbances in the field. The quality of our disturbance is determined by our level of awareness and our consciousness. And the beauty of this information, these atoms, information atoms, emerging and collapsing, is that whatever is present in one instant of time doesn't mean it has to be there in the next instant. Because there's a moment between the emergence and the collapsing, a brief nano fraction of a moment where neither exists. And our new thinking, our new feeling then informs the way, the expression of the next pulse of those atoms. And this is what gives us our potential, the extraordinary potential no other form of life in our world is known to have. I'm sure in the cosmos, many other forms of life, but on this planet, no other form of life can consciously access the ability to transcend the circumstances of the moment so that we're not defined by our past. And I am a living example of that. Many people know, I don't like to dwell on it, and it's not a focus, but when people ask me, I'm okay to talk about it. I come from a very dysfunctional, abusive, alcoholic family. I'm a survivor of childhood trauma. I've learned you always will be. That never goes away. So I will always be a survivor of childhood trauma. And I've learned to transcend, because early in my life, I said, I don't want to be defined by what has happened in my past. Now, I have a younger brother. We are the same parents, exactly the same background. And if he were here with us, you wouldn't know we're brothers. We're like night and day. We look different, we think different, we sound different, and we've approached life from a very different perspective. But we had the same tools to begin with. I was blessed early in life. I recognized what I called back in the 60s a strong soul compass. And that strong soul compass helped me to navigate my life in the 1950s and the 1960s, very turbulent times, by allowing me to think for myself and not be influenced by peer pressure or shaming, which is exactly what's happening today. Peer pressure and shaming is being used to social engineer entire societies. And it's only possible because individuals have forgotten. It's not that it's not there. They've just forgotten that they have a soul compass. And when we tap into the deep truth of our soul compass, then all of those other things become noise. They become distractions. They don't become the guiding principles in our lives. And I think this is important for all of us. So that healing, the fact that we literally can renew ourselves. When I really began to grok that, I mean, you hear it. And I go to a conference and, a couple thousand people in the room, and I say that, and they're taking notes. I can rebuild myself. Okay. They write the words, but what does that really mean? I mean, when you really get it, it means no matter what has happened or what our circumstances are, they are malleable. They are soft. It's not set in stone. And that is the beauty of choice in our lives. And it's the beauty of coming to rhythmia, because in rhythmia, my experience of rhythmia is everyone learns differently. And that's the beauty. We are all different people. We don't learn at the same rate. Partners, husbands and wives, spouses typically don't learn at exactly the same rate. One will be the searcher, and the other will either opt to explore what their partner's found, or they'll move in another direction. And we're like that as communities, as families, as nations. And at Rhythmia, there are many ways to open the doors to thinking of ourselves differently and seeing ourselves differently, even if it's just for the few days that we're at Rhythmia. And then you see where that goes. But I'll tell you, I've been with groups of people. I'll just tell you, I was at a workshop not long ago. People sign up, they cancel, they postpone. And when all was said and done, it was all male workshop. And I asked the men on the first day, why are you here? And most of them said, because my wife made me come. My wife signed me up. And what they said to me was very telling. They said, this stuff you're talking about, we'll do it in this room, but we're never going to do it outside this hotel. We'll never do this again. And I said, that's fine. And here's why I said that. Because once you open the door to that new perception of yourself, it is very, very difficult to go back, because you cannot unknow what you now know. You cannot unchange. It takes a lot of work to go back and discount everything that you've just discovered about yourself. So I said, that's cool. That's cool, dude. I said, hey, I'll tell you what he said. He goes, I'm not going to hug another man. And I said, well, you can hug a man in here. And I'll tell you what, by the end of this was the huggiest bunch of guys. and it was a beautiful example, because once they open the door to the new possibilities, it shifts your perception and your frame of reference so that you cannot look at things the way that you did hours or days before. So once you step into that, it's really hard to go back. Isn't that interesting?
It is so interesting. And it's completely consistent. That's a miracle, right?
Yeah.
A shift in perspective.
It
is a miracle. And it's so, all the years that the locusts have eaten away shall be given back to us. Nothing in the past changes, but this shift in perspective changes our interpretation of that. And I love what you said, that you can't unsee it.
Well, you cannot. And honestly, I mean, you could do it in your living room, but it's easier to do it when you are away from your familiar environment, when you're surrounded by support of people that genuinely care. And the food is awesome at Rhythmia. The living organic food it is a powerful way to nourish and nurture your body. And you're surrounded by experts, people who care and support you in to whatever degree you choose to accept that new perception. And then once you get on the shuttle or wherever it is to go back to the airport, you have to ask, am I the same person that came from there? Or when you go back to your family, am I the same person that left this family a week ago? And for some people, that's where the real workshop of life begins, because it's an opportunity to openly, honestly, and truthfully convey the deep truth and new understandings of what we've discovered about ourselves. And that is a workshop unto itself.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. We always say, I say that you can check in, but you can't check out, because the same person that checked in is never the same person that checks out.
Yeah. Well, there's a song about that we could sing from the west coast of the U.S. at Hotel California, but I won't do it here.
We'd love to hear you sing, man.
Well, okay. So for those listening who may not know, the phrase is, you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. And that's very true. Check out anytime you want, but you're never going to leave.
Never leaving. And still the same person that checked in isn't checking out, for sure.
Well, you can see the musician in us is coming out, John. So we got to reel it in here. We got to get back to the.
So I would love to. This just flows so nicely. I had a huge understanding during the time I was reading The Divine Matrix years ago. And, that book really opened up my understanding. Somehow the understanding of the first law of thermodynamics and Einstein's special theory of relativity finally, kind of in my layman's terms, I don't have any of the scientific degrees that you have. My degree's in rhetoric and composition, but understanding something about this, energy is neither created nor destroyed, but transferred or conveyed into different forms. Sounds an awful like I'm the Alpha and the Omega, without birth and without death. And this idea of, I don't know anything that gets of the math that gets us to E equals MC squared, but somehow your book helped me see that energy and mass were just on different sides of an equal sign, and that all of existence is just slowed, stored energy vibrating at different frequencies. These two insights helped me see something about, or understand the metaphysical principle that there's one source, one energy, one consciousness in back of everything, influencing everything. And this helped me understand in my own mind, the science of prayer, and how consciousness informs the field. All of this to say, given that, will you explain a little bit about this question in a simple-minded way? Where does consciousness reside? Is consciousness in the mind, or is the mind in consciousness? Is the soul in the body, or is the body in the soul?
Well, I think, those are two different questions. And I think you just answered the first. Consciousness exists everywhere in all things. And this is one of the fundamental shifts that should be made in our education of our young people. But there's a battle that is unfolding. It's happening right before our eyes. We all know there's a battle for our thoughts. It's playing out in mainstream media. There's a battle for our beliefs. What do we believe about climate change? What do we believe about 5G? What do we believe about chemtrails? What do we believe about our origins? Who are we and where we come from? And there's an even deeper battle for our very humanness that is playing out as technology is infringing upon our biology. And we can talk about that a little bit. But the new discoveries, when I was in school, again, back in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, I was taught that we emerged from a dead universe, a dead inert universe through lucky physics that just happened to occur the way that they did, and that we are the product of random mutations, nothing special, just lucky biology. And what the new science is showing is it's overturned all of that. The new science, and this is a long answer to your question, but the new science is showing us is that the universe is actually alive. It is conscious. And it is ordered, it's not random, and it is intelligent. There is an underlying, an inherent intelligence in all things in the universe. Now, when you talk about the soul, that is a localized phenomenon, a localized experience in this homogeneous field that's creating the wrinkle. My consciousness is coalescing energy in just the right way to give you the Gregg show. I'm the Gregg show. As long as my consciousness is here, and when my consciousness leaves, the show is over, and I go back into that homogeneous field. So physics is struggling with this, because right now, physicists for about 100 years, they have arrived at the understanding that there are these four fundamental forces in the universe. The gravity is one of them, the electromagnetic force, the strong and the weak nuclear force. And the struggle has been to unify them into one story, into the story, the mathematics story, and the story of physics, of who we are and how things work. Einstein, on his deathbed, expressed his frustration at not being able to do this. Well, the reason they have not been able to do it is what you and I are talking about right now. They have yet to acknowledge the force of consciousness as a force. So physicists, up until recently, were seeing everything as separate, independent. Einstein didn't like the idea that things were connected. He called it, he says, if we can influence from one place what happens somewhere else, he said that's what he called spooky action at a distance. He didn't like the idea of entanglement. So he certainly didn't like the idea that the universe is conscious and intelligent. We're going to have to accept that for science to move forward. But what they're doing is they're creating all kinds of, we've got all these different string theory, perfect example. String theory is a theory that works only if you use these variables that have to be a certain number. We don't know why it has to be that number. Scientists say, I don't know, if I make it this number, the equations work. Or if you throw out the factor of time, what is called the pesky problem of time is what physicists often call it. We don't understand time well enough to incorporate it. When time drops out of the equations, it's able to unify the equations. So the question is, does time even exist? Is it real? Does it exist everywhere or only in some places? And I'll just tell you the answer to that right now. Time does not exist in all places. There is a measurement. It's called the Planck scale. Below the Planck scale, there is no time. So because it doesn't exist in some places, do we need to account for it in all places? And these are the kinds of issues, very philosophical issues, that scientists are struggling with. And what I want to say is that science is actually simple, and nature is simple until we make it complex with complex language and with symbols that represent nature. But the concept of nature, and that's why we can talk about this, these things are actually very, very simple. It's our attempt to represent them in a unique language that makes them appear complex. So consciousness, yes, the universe is consciousness. Consciousness is everything, everywhere, at all times. Our unique wrinkle in the field, our soul, That is what gives us our uniqueness, and it is an element of the consciousness. Certainly, our soul is communicating with the consciousness of the field to give us our experience. When our consciousness, when our soul withdraws from this consciousness, then our soul goes back to another place, and the science is beginning to zero in on where they think that place is, and it has opened the door to a very deep understanding that we're probably not here to begin with, which is what the ancient traditions have always said. This is the dream, this is the Maya, this is the illusion that we are projecting from what's called a base reality. That base reality is the home of the soul. And we could spend the rest of our time talking about what that means. And I'm happy to do that. So I want you to know, I've got my phone here. I've got a text. My next interview is a soft interview. It's a pre-record, and we started late, so I'm pushing the time on that. So I don't want you to feel pressured. If we go 10 more minutes, I'm good with that.
Oh my, what a gift. What a gift. Thank you. I was conscious of the time, and I wanted to
I know you are. I saw you looking, and I just want to honor our audience. I want to honor you. We had a little tech glitch at the very beginning, so we've got about 11 or 12 more minutes here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can do a lot in 11 or 12 minutes.
We sure can. I'd love to follow up on this idea of the soul as a wrinkle in consciousness. Really just to share, I've been coming to think about this. I'd love to hear how this relates to what you just said, right? I'm thinking of this as a spectrum, right? Like there's visible red, right? And then there's infrared, and there's a whole range of non-visible red, but it's all red.
Yeah.
And this idea of consciousness, that we reside in this field of consciousness, and that yet we are it. It's everything we are. We're a part of it. And that we are the form of that formless consciousness, as you said, consciousness coalescing, so that there's this connection. I'm connected to the field as an extension of it, a unique iteration of it, and yet at the same time connected to the wholeness of it. Am I thinking about this in the right way? And is that what you were speaking to?
Well, the answer is yes, and there are many ways to approach this. That is a mystical, philosophical perspective. And now, if I can, John, with your permission, let me share with you how science is approaching this, because it brings us full circle in everything that we're saying. When I was in school back in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, we certainly didn't know about biology then what we know now. We knew, it was only 1930s and 40s when scientists thought cells were these little sacks of salt water with, maybe some proteins or something in there, and now we know that they're very complex. So I'm just going to begin with an overarching philosophy that opens the door to what I'm going to say. There is an emerging philosophy in scientific circles, and this is a deep one, so I'm going to invite people to think about this, that consciousness informs itself through its creations. So through the things that we make in our world that we think are entertainment or diversion. So the art that we create, the sculptures, the music, the books that we write, that really they are us telling ourselves something about ourselves that we want, that our consciousness is asking us to remember. The movies that we create. I mean, look at the most popular films in Hollywood in the last 20, 30 years, the science fiction films, like The Matrix, for example. Matrix was all about a world that we cannot see, that we're part of, that influences the world we can see. Now, there's a lot of other stuff going on to make it a cool movie. That's a pretty deep concept to put into a film. Avatar. Movie Avatar is informing us about our relationship with the natural world. So if this concept is true, that consciousness informs itself through its creations, what does that mean for technology? Well, think about technology. We have built a worldwide internet that connects all things. Where did that idea come from? We are building chemicals outside of our bodies to enhance our immune response. where do the idea for those chemicals and that enhancement come from? So here's what science now knows. The average human body has about 50 trillion approximately cells. Every one of those cells has an electrical charge, small, 0.07 volts. And you say, well, that's not very much. And I say, you're right, but do the math. 50 trillion times 0.07 volts, I'll do the math for you. It's about 3.5 trillion volts of electrical potential. And if you're just writing that number down, let me give you context. You know what a 12-volt car battery looks like, or a 12-volt battery for a solar panel, same thing now. It would take 3 billion 12-volt batteries to equal the electrical potential within your body. And I'm pointing to whoever's watching this. But it doesn't stop there, because every one of those cells is also, it functions as a transistor, massaging energy as it goes through the cells, as a resistor, as a capacitor. Every one of the cells in our bodies absorbs photons of light, information. The light is information. We emit photons of light, information. The exterior of the cells have receptors, and we know about them because of COVID. You were seeing those receptors. They can receive chemical messages, but they also receive non-chemical messages, energetic messages coming as light, coming as electromagnetic waves. The DNA is an antenna that receives information. The genes are antenna within the DNA that receive information. Every cell in our body stores and releases the information. And you say, well, Greg, that sounds just like what the machines do around us. Consciousness informs itself through its creations. Through our technological world, I have yet to see anything built in the world around us that does not mimic what we already do in the cells of our body, except we do it better. And we self-regulate thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, breath, and focus. We self-regulate. So that goes for the computer chips, that goes for the internet, that goes for the chemicals that are supposed to help us and strengthen our bodies in the presence of virus and disease. Chemicals may do that. They're mimicking what we already do. We do this in our bodies. So when you really begin to think about this and our relationship to this field and our ability to self-regulate this soft technology, what you begin to see is that we are a highly advanced, technologically sophisticated form of consciousness interacting in the field in temporary ways for maybe 80, 100, 120 years. And during the time that we're here, that we are part of that field, we are imparting our design of what we perceive to be true into that field. And we're doing that together, and we're hopefully having a great time doing it. Hopefully we're having a great time doing it. But this is when we begin talking about affirmations and prayer. It is the underlying feeling, the vibration of the affirmation or the prayer that's communicating with the field in a language the field recognizes. And this is key. It's not always a verbal language. That's why people can say their prayers a million times and they don't seem to have any effect, because it's not, the words aren't the prayers. It's the words are designed to evoke an emotional response through the neurons in the heart and the brain and the cells. And that is the language that the field recognizes. So the words are important. And the words have been passed down to us in Sanskrit or Aramaic or Cherokee or Navajo or Hopi or whatever it is. But the words are the code to elicit the feeling and the energetic response in the body. And that energetic response is those 50 trillion cells, 3.5 trillion volts of potential, and all the things that go with that. That makes us very powerful beings. And that's, I know we're getting close to the end, but this is what I want to say. I think the most powerful thing that any of us can do right now, and perhaps the most radical act that any of us could embark upon, is to think for ourselves, to think independently, and to think from the perspective of our extraordinary potential to thrive and to heal, rather than from the fear that is being thrust upon us from others who simply don't understand what we're talking about right now. Because if they did understand it, I think they would come from it from a very different place. So we're living at this time, John. It's really interesting. The world changed. Boy, did it ever. And in the presence of that change, what I'm seeing is two parallel societies are emerging. There is a society that is all in on all things, on the technology, the surveillance, the chemicals, the chips, the wires. And there's another element of our society that is saying, you know what, I can't put my finger on it, but something just doesn't feel right. It's too much. The technology is too much. We need to go back to the basics. We need to go back to the truth of who we are, something simpler. And what's happening is it's not the future. This is happening right now. It's happening within family units. It's happening. The kids are thinking one way and parents another way. What's happening is we're going to live these parallel lifetimes for a brief period of time. It's not going to take long. And we're going to look at one another and say, who's happier? Who's more fulfilled? Who's healthier? And the answer to that question is going to be what informs us as we move forward. And the only way to do that is to embrace the deep truth of the extraordinary potential that lives within us. And that's what this conversation's been all about. So other than that, not much going on in the world.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Gregg, for the wisdom and beauty and intelligence and love that you bring into the world, and for sharing yourself with us today and the generosity of your time. It's been a great honor, and I look forward to welcoming you back to Rhythmia soon and continuing the conversation.
I look forward to that as well. I want to thank you for your trust and bring me into your community. I am very far away from a computer screen, so I cannot read what's there, but I'm seeing a lot of comments. So I want to thank everyone, thank our community for sharing a part of your day with us. I'm assuming they're good comments, so thank you for your love and support. And if they're not good comments, thank you for your honesty. All right, and we're all in this together. John, I have another interview. Give my love to everyone I should be giving my love to at Rhythmia, my Rhythmia family. Awesome Sylvia, the tech person that just helped connect us today. She's really good at what she does. And I look forward to our next. All right.
I do as well. And please give my love to Martha, and a pleasure. I'll see you soon. God bless you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.